We're glad you're here for the Year in Review edition of the FAC Live Show. We're taking a look back at some of the insightful discussions we've had over the past year.
And welcome back to the FAC Live Show, where we talk about all things technology and digital within the Caribbean. If you are just joining us, we are joined by Pauline Joseph, Ingrid Riley, and Michelle Maris, who I have all personally known for a number of years as innovators in the digital space within the Caribbean. So, on International Women's Day, we are really going to get into the crux of it now. And Pauline, I'm going to start with you. You and I have discussed this a little bit over the years as well in terms of, but what do you believe the current role and the future role that women have to play within the digital and technology space within the Caribbean?
Well, I need to start with data because that's how I live and breathe. And based on what we see online, women are the ones taking risk. And when it comes to activities and being able to try new things, especially like from a female perspective, a female customer, because that's where traditionally in marketing space, that's where the buying power is. You see women taking risk and trying. And if I'm to really be honest with myself and look in the mirror, I'm one of those. And when it comes to the digital space, and especially in entrepreneurship in the Caribbean, I'm seeing a lot of women in the services space. So you have a lot of bloggers, even when I'm utilizing our space of content creators, we have people using the technologies and allowing themselves to try and fail, which has been a problem in the past because we have this overwhelming feeling of if I try this new technology, it's not going to work. And that's it. I'm never going to do this again. But based on what we're seeing people trying, and when they're failing, hey, me, they continue. And I think it's extremely important, especially now what has happened over the last 2 years with the pandemic. When it comes to businesses, that digital adoption is important for balancing work-life balance as well, and being able to use the technologies like the Microsoft and the AWSs of the world, where the IT space and department need to support, and being able to manage individuals to say, hey, this is the infrastructure, digital infrastructure we have created for the company that will allow people to not just work from home, but manage their kids. And at the end of the day, the responsibility from a society perspective is usually on the woman, let's be frank. And having that digital adoption is extremely important for businesses to succeed.
There's just a quick question here that I think is worth addressing from Jacqueline Morris, who's listening in. For me, when reading this, I can understand that the technology is moving so fast. Is there going to be a greater divide? That comes down to education. So, Michelle, do you think that the governments and the legislation and the education network within the region is equipped to start equipping our next generations with what they need to keep up with this technology change?
That's a good question. And I have my concerns. And I mean, I definitely think that Jacqueline's question is absolutely legitimate, because I do think that the digital divide is likely to widen just because of, one, the speed at which technology is advancing, and consequently, those who probably have a little bit more understanding of what's going on. Just being able to keep up with that is a challenge for people who may consider themselves digitally savvy. So, for those who are still newbies or haven't even gotten on that path as yet in any sort of meaningful way, I think that is going to be a challenge. And I think one of the things that we, and probably for policymakers in particular, that one is they need to probably be a little bit more aware of is the fact that not because everybody has a mobile phone means that they're digitally literate or digitally savvy. And that, I think, is it has probably given us a sort of false sense of security. And I also know that across the region we have, 2G and those sorts of technologies that are still quite prevalent. And so there is not necessarily the incentive for people, and granted that there are cost factors that need to also be considered, just in terms of the level of use that they get from their devices, or what then they potentially could demand. I mean, having just like a very simple, mobile phone as opposed to a smartphone will make all the difference in terms of the things that you can do. But I think because everybody has a mobile device, and the fact that luckily the providers, I think, have been able to, get their, offer packages that allow for like mobile data and so on, and you have zero rated content and that sort of thing, we think that everything is okay. But a lot of people are not as digitally literate as they need to be in this day and age, and for what is coming. And so I am concerned about that. I certainly think, though, that, and again, I guess we may have to thank the pandemic for so many things, because even just in terms of online education and the digital education thrust, those, I think, really started to sort, in a way that perhaps had not been done before, is to give the education system greater exposure to the ways that they could be leveraging technology. And, granted that I saw on something in the papers recently here in Jamaica about how, I guess, the technology thrust will continue in Jamaica, but I'm not so sure about that. We'll see how that is going to reveal itself over time. But I really think, though, that ultimately probably certainly in schools, that we cannot allow education to sort of revert to what it had been pre-pandemic, but really try to increase our use and integration of technology in the classroom, and more so at home. So, thinking about the connected learner as opposed to just doing stuff in school.
Hello, my name is Tricia Lyons-Hill, and I'm the SVP of Business Development and Marketing here at First Atlantic Commerce. I cycle through lots of emails to keep track of everything that's happening with our merchants, with our banks, and of course internally. I provide reports to banks on merchant status, and whether that be integration status or upgrade to a new platform or just general merchant boarding practices. I'll respond to merchants regarding our solutions and what we can offer them and what the best fit for them. This will be via calls and emails. And this often involves a lot of education as to how we as a gateway fit into the e-commerce process. I have a lot of meetings with our acquiring banks, our partner banks, and our partners. And partners can include our technology partners, such as Count, which is our fraud mitigation platform, and our shopping cart plugin providers, or our marketing partners, such as AC Marketing and TechBeach, for example. Let's see, you can also find me writing press releases about a new product or a new partnership, editing blogs, and going over content for our social media platforms. This is a tough one because I've been here for so long. But I would say I do enjoy every fall, the executive team sits down to strategize for the next year. Then we write the business plan based on our strategy session, and we take a day to do that. And I really do enjoy that because we can see all of our accomplishments from the year before, and then we get excited, and it builds up a lot of excitement for the next year. When I'm not at work, you can usually find me walking my dog. I have a cockapoo, and he requires a lot of exercise. I love to go boating and swimming, and I have two teenage daughters, so I do a lot of tidying up. My girls often refer to me as a neat freak, but I just can't help myself. I'm always tidying up after them. And obviously just spending time with my family and friends.
The government has embarked on those access centers, making Wi-Fi and high-speed internet available in those rural areas, and to solve the same problem, giving access to persons who don't have access. So if you may not have access at your home, you can actually visit one of those centers where there are computers, there's high-speed internet for you to actually utilize to go online, actually see and do business. Make those same said payments that we're speaking about, utilizing e-commerce features, utilizing e-commerce platforms to actually do business, and thereby helping trying to reduce that financial exclusion from the market and increase financial inclusion. Because remember, financial inclusion is a big part of everything that we're discussing, because even still globally, we still have 1.7 billion persons financially excluded from the system. So we have to understand and try to find out how can we reduce the number within our economies, within our countries. And we have, right in Trinidad, we have identified a number of ways, even smart cities having, one of the things is having the ARIMA, as one of those smart cities having Wi-Fi throughout the city, throughout the borough. So to help reduce financial inclusion, giving persons access to high-speed internet on the go in those access centers. So we have those already in place.
So, Annie, what role do you think business incubators or accelerators are playing, specifically within the e-commerce landscape within the Caribbean?
Well, I'll first answer that really through the lens of Nudge, which, to give it a little bit of context, we support micro, small, and medium businesses that are primarily in the commodity space. So e-commerce is obviously something that comes up often when we are talking about scaling. And certainly, as it pertains to tech-enabled companies, which is what our demographic is, there's a need to support the bridging from wherever you are in your e-commerce spectrum to really being able to leverage the technology to benefit your goals and milestones. So I think, for instance, some of our entrepreneurs have been sponsored to go through the Tech Beach Accelerator that focuses at times on e-commerce in particular, and it has been incredibly beneficial. Everything from accessing a variety of services from global organizations that can advance their ability to scale through e-commerce to the network of sort of peer-to-peer support that comes through that process. I mean, the litany of support that comes through that specific accelerator as it pertains to e-commerce is fantastic. And for Nudge, we have seen the growth of our entrepreneurs go through accelerators like that. So I think the sky is really the limit, and it really also depends on the aptitude of the entrepreneur to really leverage what is being offered through either an incubator program or an accelerator program. But as it pertains to e-commerce, I think it is especially needed just because that level of tech support, that level of technology understanding is not something that we are exposed to generally in our average schooling system. So it's something you do have to go after, and oftentimes these programs fill that gap for entrepreneurs in this region.
All right, thank you. Given the effect of the pandemic, and the fact that businesses have to go online, you're seeing much more adoption and much more willingness for people to stay in the online world compared to going back to brick and mortar and standing in lines, which is part of all our cultures, it seems.
Absolutely. I mean, I think on every angle, of course, accessibility is part of our issue in this region, but for those who can access retail in this way, it has had a major impact on both the consumer end and on the provider end. So I don't see a return to the level of brick and mortar retail as we had before. I think in-person retail will become much more experiential, as it already is, and complementary to e-commerce retail. So there's 100% because of the pandemic that caused the need more of an adoption based on desire, which I think is really powerful. And it's wonderful for the micro entrepreneurs in particular, because otherwise they don't have a tremendous amount of distribution channels at their fingertips, whereas e-commerce can create this D2C opportunity, especially for export, that didn't really exist before.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I want to add to that, and I'm just going to put the question out there. Sean mentioned earlier the differences between the incubator and the accelerator from an idea versus, hey, take a part of my business and turn this is what I'm going to get. How are folks like you looking at a business who may not have any plans for e-commerce? How important is that e-commerce conversation to even be considered to be part of these programs?
We're agnostic as to the type of business, but we found that almost every business has an e-commerce element to it. We used to talk about fintech and e-commerce as if they were different things from business and doing business. What we're finding is now, we've got retailers on Ireland who are delivering goods within 15, 20 minutes using all the technology of tracking and payments and payment gateways. you know, in an environment where that is becoming an expected norm for the consumer. And I think what's happened is that COVID has accelerated that process for most businesses. And the advantage, if you look at you know, some of the work Chris and his team does, is if you can take advantage and build your business on a platform that is in a regulated environment and has an efficiency right from day one to allow you to scale. Because what we often find is people go off and build small MVPs and then they try and scale up from there and they run into trouble. I mean, we've had a couple of businesses on Ireland, really great businesses, great business models, and they try and scale, and then there isn't the capability to do that. So think about the business that you want to be in 3 years' time, and then build your technical platform now for that environment so that you're ready. And I think almost every business, whether it's delivering goods to consumers or booking an appointment and paying for it online with a psychologist or a coach, all of those businesses can use the technology in e-commerce.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And in fact, that's why we start our training program with a module on going digital. We've actually partnered with MasterCard, with National Commercial Bank, so that the idea that your business, you know, can only operate in one mode, that's passé now. As we've all said, consumers expect to be able to find goods and services online. So we help our founders to figure out how to undertake this digital transformation. And we even give them the tools. So NCB, for example, which is one of our sponsors, will provide our founders with, you know, credit card, merchant account. They will help them, you know, provide them with a template to build an e-commerce enabled website. So they're getting the tools that they can use right away. And I think that's really important for all businesses to think about, how can I transform what I have into a digital business? Because that's the way of the future.
My name is Oana Burlacu and I'm a certification analyst with First Atlantic Commerce. My favorite Christmas memory is spending Christmas breakfast with my family. I come from a very religious Christian Orthodox family and we had to fast for 6 weeks before Christmas, so Christmas morning was a big thing for us. My favorite Christmas tradition is buying presents for my family and friends and sharing them.
Chris, I'll start with you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So, if any of the pre-show is anything to go by, this is going to be a very lively discussion. And I'm looking forward to this immensely.
That's and you know, Pauline, Pauline, if I could add to that.
It almost makes me want to jump in a plane and move, because when it comes to renewing one's driver's license in the country of Trinidad and Tobago, it can become a whole day affair, if not a week-long affair. So, Carlos, I'm not like pointing fingers or anything.
No, that is soon to change.
Oh wow, brilliant!
Yes.
I love that, Sean. I think that's something I'm gonna keep in my back pocket.
Wow, I don't understand how come I'm getting all of these difficult questions for us.
I'm going to give that to everybody too. It's a shame that we have to stop it there, but thank you to everybody listening. You know, please spread the word. There's a lot of great information here, and until next time, we will see you then.